Have you ever felt like someone tried to control your own home, as if you weren't the owner anymore? That's exactly what happened to me when the HOA decided to put locks on my own gate. Imagine waking up one morning, stepping outside, and realizing you're no longer free to use your own property the way you want. It feels shocking, unfair, and almost unbelievable. I still remember the day clearly. My house sat peacefully behind that gate for years. It was my safe place, my comfort zone, my pride. And then, one morning, there it was, a heavy lock shining in the sun, hanging on the gate that belonged to me. No warning, no explanation, just control. The first thought that hit me was, this can't be real, but it was. And it was the start of a battle that would teach me, and maybe even you, a very important lesson. Never underestimate your rights. When neighbors turn into watchdogs, the HOA liked to act as if they were the guardians of perfection in the neighborhood. They wanted the lawns cut a certain way, the fences painted in approved colors, and even the kind of flowers chosen to fit their vision. At first, I thought it was just annoying, but when they decided to cross the line and literally lock me out of my own gate, it became more than annoying, it became personal. Think about it. Your home is supposed to be your private world. Nobody should be able to tell you when you can open or close your own gate. But the HOA, they believed they had the right. They said it was for safety reasons and that shared areas must be protected. But here's the problem. My gate wasn't a shared area. It was mine. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA before, you know one thing. Once they start grabbing control, they don't stop. The first confrontation. I went to the next HOA meeting, determined to demand answers. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady. Who gave you the right to lock my gate? I asked. The room went quiet. The board members exchanged looks, as if I had just said something forbidden. Finally, the president spoke up. He had that smug smile that only people who love power can wear. It's for the good of the community, he said. We can't allow random access through those gates. I wanted to laugh. Random access? That was my property. My gate, my life, but they didn't see it that way. They saw it as theirs. And that's when I knew this wasn't going to be solved with polite words. The slow burn of frustration. Every day after that, the lock became a symbol of how powerless they wanted me to feel. I would stand at the gate, staring at it, the metal chain pressing against the wood like a prison door. I couldn't shake the thought that if they could lock my gate, what else could they take? Would they try to tell me where to park my car? Would they start controlling who could visit my home? Would they even try to tell me what hours I was allowed to come and go? It sounds extreme, but with HOAs, once they take control, they push further and further. I began documenting everything. Every email, every letter, every photograph of that lock on my gate. I knew if I wanted to fight this, I couldn't just be emotional, I had to be smart. The breaking point. One day, I tried to cut the lock off myself. It was my gate, after all. I figured I had every right. But just as I was about to, a neighbor came running over. You can't do that, they whispered. The HOA will fine you. Fine me? For touching my own property? That was the moment I realized just how twisted the situation had become. The HOA wasn't just controlling me. They had brainwashed the neighbors into thinking it was normal. That's when I decided, this has to go to court, preparing for the legal battle. Filing a case against the HOA isn't easy. They have lawyers, money from community fees, and a whole system built to make homeowners feel small. But here's the truth. The law protects homeowners more than HOAs want you to believe. I gathered my evidence. I highlighted property lines. I collected testimonies from people who had seen the HOA tampering with my gate. I even found past cases where HOAs had been sued for overstepping. It was draining. Some nights I stayed awake wondering, what if I lose? What if they bankrupt me with fines? But deep down I knew, if I didn't stand up now, I'd regret it forever. Day in court. Finally, the day came. Walking into that courtroom felt like stepping onto a battlefield. On one side sat the HOA board members, stiff and confident. On the other side sat me, armed only with truth and determination. The HOA's lawyer spoke first. He painted me as uncooperative, as someone who didn't respect community rules. He made it sound like I was the villain, But when it was my turn, I spoke with all the honesty I had. "Your Honor," I said, "this isn't about rules. This is about rights. The HOA locked me out of my own property. They crossed a line that no one should cross." The judge leaned back, listening carefully. I could see the shift in his eyes as he understood what this case was really about: freedom, fairness, and the abuse of power. The twist nobody expected. After days of arguments, the judge finally gave his ruling, and it was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. The HOA, he said, had no legal right to lock this homeowner's gate. Therefore, not only must the locks be removed immediately, but as compensation, the homeowner is granted full access rights to the HOA's private pool facilities. The room froze. The HOA's faces turned pale. I could barely believe my ears. Not only had I won, but I had gained access to their most protected treasure, the pool they guarded like it was gold. It was poetic justice. They tried to take away my freedom. And in return, I gained access to the one thing they never wanted to have: the message behind the victory. Winning that case wasn't just about me. It was about sending a message to every homeowner who feels powerless against an HOA. You are not powerless. You have rights. And sometimes standing up for those rights not only brings justice, but also exposes the truth about those who misuse power. That pool key in my hand wasn't just metal. It was a symbol, a reminder that no matter how big the HOA thought they were, they couldn't break me. Call to action, end of section 1. If you ever felt like someone tried to take control of what's rightfully yours, don't stay silent. Don't let fear stop you. Stand up, gather your strength, and fight back. Because the moment you do, you'll realize something powerful. You're stronger than you think, and your voice matters more than their rules. Have you ever held something so small in your hand, but felt the weight of an entire victory behind it? That's how it felt the first time I held those shiny HOA pool keys. They weren't just keys. They were proof. Proof that no matter how hard they tried to control me, I had won. But let me tell you, victory doesn't always taste sweet at first. Sometimes it makes enemies even angrier. The HOA hated it. You could see it in their eyes every time I walked by. They weren't just upset about losing in court. They were furious that the judge had given me something they had always kept for themselves. That pool was their pride, their kingdom. And now, the person they tried to crush had free access. The neighborhood whispers. The news spread faster than I could imagine. Neighbors started whispering about it at night, leaning over fences and chatting in driveways. "Did you hear? The judge gave them the pool keys." Some people laughed. Others shook their heads in disbelief. But here's the thing. Not everyone was against me. Quietly, people began to come forward. They shared stories about how the HOA had pushed them around, fined them unfairly, or humiliated them in meetings. For the first time, the neighborhood began to realize maybe the HOA wasn't as powerful as they thought. The first time at the pool. I'll never forget walking up to that pool for the first time with my new keys. The sun was bright. The water shimmered, and the gate stood tall with its big members-only sign. I slid the key into the lock, turned it, and heard the click. The gate swung open. It wasn't just about swimming. It was about freedom, about showing that no matter how much they tried to keep me out, I belonged there now. Not because of their permission, but because of the law. The lifeguard looked surprised. Some HOA members who were already at the pool nearly choked on their lemonade. But I didn't care. I walked in, calm and confident, and took my seat. That moment wasn't about enjoying the pool. It was about enjoying justice. The HOA's revenge attempts. But HOAs don't give up easily. Losing power makes them dangerous. And they tried every trick in the book to make my life miserable after that. First, they sent me letters. Cold, threatening letters filled with legal terms and warnings. You are being monitored. Any misuse of the pool will result in fines. We will not tolerate disruptions. Then they tried social pressure. Some board members spread rumors about me. They whispered that I was trouble and told neighbors I was a rule breaker. But here's the truth. When people see someone stand up against bullies, it inspires them. Instead of scaring me, their attempts backfired. More neighbors started asking me how I had won. Some even wanted advice on how to fight back against unfair fines. The HOA had wanted me to be an example of what happens when you disobey. Instead, I became an example of what happens when you fight for what's right, the shift in power. Over the next few months, something amazing started happening. The once feared HOA meetings began to change. People who used to sit quietly and nod started speaking up. They asked questions, challenged unfair rules, and demanded transparency. It was as if the entire neighborhood had woken up. One neighbor said to me, "You gave us courage. If you could take them to court and win, why can't we at least raise our voices?" And just like that, the HOA's control began to slip. They could no longer rule with fear. A lesson in irony. The funniest part of all, the very pool they tried so hard to keep exclusive became the place where their downfall began. Every time I showed up with my pool keys, it reminded everyone of their failure. They couldn't hide it. They couldn't deny it. The proof was right there, floating in the water. Some board members even stopped coming to the pool altogether. They hated seeing me there. But that was their problem, not mine. Isn't it ironic? They tried to lock me out my own gate, but in the end, I was sitting by their pool, drinking cold soda, and enjoying a victory they could never erase. What I learned through the battle. Looking back, the whole experience taught me more than I ever expected. First, never let anyone convince you that you don't have power. Even if they seem bigger, stronger, or richer, the truth is on your side when you stand up for your rights. Second, bullies hate exposure. The HOA want to control me quietly, but once the case went public, they couldn't hide their actions anymore. Third, one person's courage can spark change in many others. I didn't just fight for myself. I unknowingly opened the door for my entire neighborhood to question the rules that held them down. Moving forward. Today, when I walk past my gate, there's no lock hanging there. It swings open freely, the way it should have all along. And in my pocket, I still carry those pool keys. Not because I use them every day, but because they remind me of something powerful. No matter how small you feel, you can stand tall against unfairness. No matter how big they act, they can be brought down. The HOA thought they were untouchable, but in the end, the law touched them harder than they ever expected. The call to you, if you're listening to this story right now, maybe you face something similar. Maybe someone tried to control you, silence you, or make you feel powerless. It doesn't have to be an HOA. It could be a boss, a group, or even people close to you. Here's what I want you to remember. You don't have to accept it. Stand up, ask questions, demand fairness, and when the time comes, fight for your rights. Because sometimes the fight gives you more than justice. It gives you strength you didn't know you had. Final call to action, end of section 2. So if you've ever felt locked out of something that's rightfully yours, don't wait for permission. Don't let anyone chain your freedom. Step forward, speak up, and claim what belongs to you. Because the moment you do, you won't just open your own gate. You might just unlock a whole world for others too.